Despite what you may have heard over the last week or two, the Bengals, in fact, have tons of cap room, plenty of cash. They can get everything they need to get done this offseason. The real question is whether they will. Let's break it down.
Straight cash, homie.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien, and we are Locked On Bengals here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For those of you who are new to the show, we've been doing this podcast together for, 5 years now, James? We've launched the show on YouTube. For those of you that have only watched us on YouTube, we're also everywhere you get your podcast in that time, and you can hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss an episode of Locked On Bengals. And of course, the everydayers out there who have heard me say that just about every day we've done this podcast. Appreciate you. Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about a number of topics facing the Bengals front office this season, including, again, pushing back on what we continue to hear from various national shows, which is that, it's going to be tough for the Bengals. They're going to have to figure out that cap space that continues to perplex me, James, from the cash perspective, from the cap perspective. We have a couple of questions from the mailbag that you handle without me. Thank you for that. By the way, that continue to pertain to the Bengals front office. What can they do to show Joe Burrow that they are listening to the pressure that he's applied over the last few weeks and months? And what can they do in terms of timing? When should you expect certain moves to happen? But I want to start, James, with this idea that we keep hearing. We keep hearing it. Nobody's hearing us pushing back on it, I guess, in the national media. Nobody's listening to Locked On Bengals, who continues to say, I'm specifying who those people are, who continue to say the Bengals have to figure out their cap space. It's going to be really, really hard. But I guess Duke Tobin is also saying it's going to be hard. So maybe they're just listening to Duke.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's really annoying and it's maddening. And that's why Bengals fans come to Locked On Bengals. I mean, this is the ultimate promo. If there's ever an off season for, all right, let's not watch. And I got Sushi Friday, and we're recording this on Sunday afternoon. Got Sushi Friday, nice Valentine's Day sushi day. And it was great. And of course, NFL Live is on. And who are they talking about? The Bengals. And I couldn't hear what was said, but I could just feel you, especially being like, man, they have plenty of cap, and just screaming it because you have on social media. And I think that's something that we're going to remind people about. Everydayers may get slightly bothered by it, but shout out to you for being an everydayer. If you do get bothered by it, understand that we want to make sure that people understand where the expectations should be for the Bengals. And it isn't that, oh my goodness, they're looking through their pockets and they can't find the cash. They're tapped. It's not true. It isn't that they can't find the cap space. There's plenty of cap space. There's plenty of ways they can maneuver this offseason and address the needs you're concerned about the most, and also keep the top free agent, T. Higgins, in town long-term, and also pay Trey Hendrickson give him a sizable raise as the NFL sack leader, and pay the best receiver in football, Jamar Chase. Like, they can do all of those things. And it's a matter of will they, not can, but will. And that's scary. I get that, but that is the reality. So if they don't do it, they're choosing not to do it. And it makes it that much harder, I think, to get this offseason right. It really does. Whether you take any of these paths, if you're not keeping those three guys, it just makes it harder. Not impossible, but much harder to have a home run, grand slam type of offseason that they need to have. So we're talking about them potentially going to Santa Clara next year and playing in Super Bowl 60.
And they've gotten it right before when they've made some of these decisions, which is probably the interesting thing, or an interesting thing about it, and something that they're probably thinking about from the front office perspective. Think back to William Jackson, think back to Carl Lawson, some players that at the time we thought the Bengals would be served to keep, but the pivots from those players were significant upgrades at the time. You want to push back on one of those?
Yeah, both of them.
Okay.
Carl Lawson never had produced sack-wise like Trey. ever. Never had a year like Trey did when they signed him. No, I get it. It was a one-off for Trey, but definitely fair there. Had the injury issues. And then William Jackson III was the definition of a one-hit wonder. T. Higgins has been a stud year in and year out. Like I get the logic, but we're just talking about a different level of player.
Oh yeah.
For one reason or another. I get what you're saying. It's just there's levels to it. And there was never a free agent world where William Jackson III was a top 5 free agent in his class. T. Higgins is 1. Trey would be possibly 2 if he was a free agent. Just to give you an idea of where these guys would line up if they were both hitting free agents.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that to say that it's like exactly the same thing. I'm bringing that up as examples where we thought the Bengals should do something collectively, the collective we, not saying you specifically, James, you weren't doing the podcast together at the time, but they went
yeah.
different.
Yeah, we were. Oh yeah. For both of them.
I even said 5 years ago at the beginning of
for both of them. And I actually think we'd have to go back and listen. We weren't on YouTube then. I think we were out on William Jackson. I think we understood that. The Carl Lawson one was a tough one because you see the talent. Carl's a freak, but the injuries were the injuries. So that was a tough one, I would say, to predict.
Well, I remember that one. Yeah, no, okay. This is coming back to me now because I remember that Carl Lawson signed elsewhere that day. Like, was it the first day?
Right before they signed Trey. Yep.
And we were waiting we were like, oh, well, we got to do they lost Carl Lawson show. And then they signed Trey Hendrickson. And at the time, there was skepticism about Trey Hendrickson, and the Bengals got that one right. But anyway, point I was trying to make before we went down this tangent was that they have at times zagged when we thought they should zig, and they have at times gotten it right. But there have also been times that they've gotten it clearly wrong. And we've talked about those examples a ton in recent weeks. And Jesse Bates certainly chief among those, but there are others that we've discussed and that you could go back and find as well. They have so much money though. And this is what gets me when I hear this stuff. Like, oh, it's going to be tough. Oh, do they have the cash? They have at least $120 million in cash to spend. And if you're looking for me to prove how I came up with that number, find it on social media. I did a 2-hour-long stream with Joe Goodberry actually last week where we talked about some of this as well. But I can go into the math another day if people really need to hear it again on the podcast. It's just looking at their historical spending trends. They historically spend 8% of cash over the cap, the unadjusted cap. And then we know how much cash they have allocated for 2025. And that tells us how much cash they have to spend. That's before accounting for a bunch of cuts that we think they're going to make. Then they have to spend that money, of course, on players to replace the players that they're going to cut. But that is money they will have to spend. That number will be closer to 150 million, I think, in cash that they can spend this year.
Straight cash, homie. You sure they can do that? I mean, are you sure they could do that? Because excuse. And this is their business, right? And that they don't have I hate all of this nonsense that's out there. Like, yeah, we know it's their business. We've covered the team for a while now, Jake.
It's our only revenue stream. So of course they're cash strapped. Don't mention that the league revenue sharing before accounting for a number of other revenues that NFL front offices or NFL owners are subject to that they get. Revenue sharing a couple years ago was over $400 million. That has gone up. The cap is specifically related to how much revenue the NFL earns and then shares. So the revenue sharing alone is covering your player expenses. I know there are other expenses. I know that NFL teams are worried about profitability as well, especially when you're the Mike Brown family and descendants that are dealing with that being your only revenue stream. They've started adding other revenue streams as a football family that we've talked about on this show. Point is, they're going to have a ton of cash. Paycor?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Pay checks soon, maybe. Who knows?
Hey, offer up the paychecks. There better be plenty of paychecks rolling out for some Trey, T, and Jamar.
The only concern that I think will be reasonable is a structure concern for this team.
Yep.
And that continues to be a legitimate thing. They won't guarantee money past year one. That continues to be a real thing. Will they break that structure for Jamar Chase? Will they need to break it for T. Higgins? Will they need to break it for Trey Hendrickson? Will they need to break it for other free agents that they're interested in talking about on the external market? Because, again, spoiler, they have tons of cap space too. They can extend those 3 guys and also play in the free agent market quite a bit. And a lot of teams are going to have a lot of resources to do that, which could drive up prices. Not the point. The Bengals have tons of resources this offseason, and anyone that's telling you otherwise just hasn't done the math.
Yeah, and let's talk about the guaranteed part of it, because I do think that people are going to say, all right, well, that's the cash flow and you got to put it into escrow. So we'll do that. We have plenty of other topics to hit as well coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on all of the fun than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Anyone else see Mac McClung in the slam dunk contest on Saturday night? My man can fly. I had someone say that's the real money, Mac, and I couldn't debate it. Couldn't debate it because three-time, so at least someone can three-peat Jake Liscow. And so whether it's the slam dunk contest, obviously, maybe you're watching this before the All-Star game on Sunday, or maybe you're thinking about getting in on some Reds or Bengals futures. FanDuel has you covered, whether it's NBA, Major League Baseball, college hoops, and of course, NFL futures. Check out FanDuel right now at FanDuel.com, and new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So throw $5 on anything, and when that $5 wins, when that bet wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets with FanDuel. They're America's #1 sports book for a reason. Again, go to FanDuel.com to start today. Again, that's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You want to talk escrow, James? What is escrow anyway?
Yeah, well, they have to put the guaranteed money into an account, basically, to show that that's there, that it's accounted for, and this is where the cash element of it, I think, comes into play for some. They say, oh, well, the Bengals don't have the cash to do that for multiple deals and all those things. And I get it. With the way things changed, they clearly realized a few years ago that they needed to change some things. But they did do that. They do have sponsorships all over. And I mean all over. It is the opposite of the way it was 10 years ago. Not only does the stadium have a name, but gates have a name. Not only does the practice field have a name, but the indoor facility, aka the bubble, has a name. You drive to Kentucky, you see the bubble, and you can see, and I forget the exact logistics company, Integrity Logistics. I forget. I apologize. The point is, there's sponsors everywhere. It's like NASCAR. And maybe I'm being a little dramatic there with the sponsorships, but the point is there's a reason they did that. And I think that this isn't about their ability to have the cash. Now, obviously, they're not going to guarantee everyone's year 2 and year 3 and year 4. I get that. I don't even know how much more they would need to guarantee Trey outside of next year. Like if they gave him a 2-year extension, let's say, I don't think they have to give him both years guaranteed. I think it would just be 2026. Jamar is different. He's a different animal. You're probably 2 of the 4 years, if it's a 4-year deal, or guaranteed. Like that's 26. Like that's not scary. And I think historically they haven't done that outside of Joe Burrow, and they had to do it for Joe. They have to do it for Jamar, and they're going to have to do it for T to a much lesser extent. Trey is interesting. I wonder if they could find common ground with him, but I don't think it's this huge issue. And it's also a reason why I'm hesitant to be like, oh, well, trade Trey and go sign Milton Williams and the edge rusher you want to go sign. Not that they couldn't do that, but there are people that say do that. I don't know if they're going to want to swim in that Milton Williams guaranteed money pool, because it's not going to be easy either. And so I think paying the guys that you have, it's probably going to be the most efficient way, even guaranteed money wise, because you have to pay Jamar. And then looking at the other two, it doesn't seem that crazy. So yeah, I think that has mattered in the past, but they're going to have to break structure for Jamar anyway. We'll see if they do it for T and Trey.
I don't think they have to for T and Trey. I think that T changing his agent, as long as they get good cash flow into that deal, big upfront money for T this year.
What do you think? Like 40 million signing bonus?
For T, I think 35 million in year 1 cash flow between roster bonus, salary, signing bonus. For Trey, he's already getting paid next year. So I'm thinking when I've done contracts for Trey, I've thought $15 million signing bonus and then the rest of that's in salary gives you a significant bump in cash flow this year if you're Trey Hendrickson, which the Bengals did for him a couple of years ago too, and then gives him a couple more years on that deal. Is he going to push for guarantees now because that's what he's worried about at this stage in his career? I think he can try. I don't think he has much of a leg to stand on in asking for guaranteed
Agreed.
years, especially from this team, especially given that he's agreed to the Bengal structures before. So I don't think it will be necessary there. I do think that if any of these guys will demand it or command it, I think more than demand it, it would be Jamar Chase.
Jamar was so the good news is there were guarantees past year one in the deal that they negotiated. It was just a really weird. It was obviously what got in the way too. Is it wasn't up to par with the wide receiver market.
And it was a cash flow issue for Jamar as well. It was like the timing of when certain things were arriving in the bank account, when certain things were becoming guaranteed, and those sorts of details. So I don't think that'll be an issue for them with Jamar Chase this offseason. And to confirm, it was Integrity Express Logistics, IEL. Is the indoor
Integrity
facility.
Express Logistics. And it's Kettering Health Practice Fields, Paycor Stadium. They have a CBTS gate. They have they have all this.
Still an Alta Fiber thing?
Oh, it might be Alta Fiber and CBTS like split, but yeah, maybe it's an Alta Fiber gate. The point is, it's all those things bring cash. All of them. They have the official wine of the Bengals. They have the obviously they partnered up with Skyline. Come on, man. Telling me that three-way money doesn't go a long way. Three-ways are like $8, bro. They were like $5 back in the day. That Skyline sponsorship goes a long way. A large three-way is like 11 something.
Just one last definition here as I refrain from making jokes that will inevitably upset some part of our viewership. Escrow is a legal arrangement in which a third party holds money or property for the buyer or seller until certain conditions are met. So in the NFL, there is a funding rule which requires that future guaranteed dollars are put into a third-party account for holding until they are released to the player whenever that guaranteed money is due to the player. And this has been a reason that has been speculated that the Bengals don't do big future guarantees because they do not have enough money to set aside into these escrow accounts for big money in future guaranteed years. Could be the case that they don't have the money to do that the way the Eagles do that, the way the Browns do that with fully guaranteed contracts and stuff like that. I think that is true, but I don't think that it is an obstacle to doing simple guarantees in a 2-year window. I think that the cash flow is evident, that there's plenty of revenue for the Bengals to do that if they were so inclined. I just don't think they're inclined. I think they're philosophically, generally risk averse and opposed to guaranteeing future money.
And that isn't a bad thing. It's a bad thing when it prevents you from signing Jamar Chase. Right? And so it can't get in the way of that. And as long as it doesn't, then that's okay. It's a bad thing when it doesn't let you keep Jesse Bates. And that was a big factor there.
The Joe Tooney Waters, for example, a couple of years ago.
The Joe Tooney Waters, correct. Yeah. And so those are the type of situations where it's annoying. But they would say, well, yeah, but we've also overcome that. We were able to get Orlando Brown Jr. We signed Joe. I think they're confident they're going to sign Jamar. And I think it is more philosophical than it is from a straight, oh my goodness, where are we going to get the cash from? The other element here I figure I'll bring up just from a relatable standpoint, anyone that's bought a house, usually put a little money in escrow initially, and that's it. It just sits there until you close. So it's similar. It would just sit there. And then whenever those guarantees are due to the player, then guess what? It gets sent to the player.
For most people, that's the escrow that they have encountered in their lives.
Yeah, that's the only one that I could think of that I think a lot of our listeners probably and viewers probably dealt with.
The question is will the Bengals do enough? Will they spend enough of their money to field a competitive team, to show that they're listening to Joe Burrow, for example, to show that they actually want to do this thing and that they're not prioritizing money over the team, prioritizing winning negotiations over the success of the team? Because if you're not going to do it now, as I said at the end of that episode with Elise Jesse last week, I don't know when you're going to do it. I really if this isn't the moment that causes you to be like, let's push it for a window here, I don't know when that will happen. So with that being said, let's talk about what the Bengals front office can do in the next few weeks and months to show Joe Burrow that they've heard him and that they understand his perspective and have felt that pressure coming from the fans too. We'll get into that topic coming up next.
I think that this window, Jake, because you're going to hear like Colin Cowherd last week said, oh, well, I think Joe Burrow's going to demand a trade at some point. The Sharks are starting to swim around, I guess, the Ohio River near Paycor Stadium. And,
Those poor
and
Sharks.
That's right. And it's going to continue if the Bengals don't get this offseason right. And I don't think it's anything Joe has said privately that he hasn't said public. I think he's saying exactly what he's saying publicly, he says privately. And it's one of those things where Joe was watching when you handle Jesse Bates the way you did. And then you go get Nick Scott and it doesn't work. And you draft Dax Hill and then you don't know what to do with him. And then you go, oh, it's fine. We're going to have Jordan Battle. We'll go get Vaughn. Heck, Joe was the one that helped get Vaughn back because he was probably told, hey, we'll get Vaughn back. We'll be able to solve these secondary issues. Didn't help. Obviously, Geno Stone had his ups and downs. He's watching this. And I do think that the national narrative is one thing, and we push back on the cap space part of it. I do think if they cry poor, not that that's exactly how it would be, but that's the narrative, or they don't get these deals done, they flinch at paying the number one free agent, T. Higgins. He's literally the number one free agent. He's 6'4", 220, coming off of a career-high 10 touchdowns. Everyone talks about his injuries. He's going to get paid a ton. Joe knows that. He's going to get paid a ton by somebody. Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, they could have gotten it done last year with Jamar. Like, Joe's watching. And so you better handle your business with those three. I'm not putting Mike Gesicki in the same realm. I know Joe did. I don't think he's in the same tier and obviously won't make the same. And so it might be easier to pay him. But if you don't keep those three guys, you better have a damn good reason. And then you better get it right after that and like right away. And I think it's just so hard to do because those marks are going to, they'll stay on Joe. That'll imprint on Joe. It's not like, oh, well, we let T walk, but we got Cooper Kupp, right? Let's just say. Joe's going to be like, that's such a downgrade. He's 6 years older and he's not nearly the same player as T at this stage. And so tread lightly there because Joe's watching. And I do think that whatever they do now will impact the future, either positively or negatively. I can get into that in a second, but I think that this is a huge 2 months in how they operate and in how they handle themselves with these negotiations with all three guys.
And there's really no excuse for not getting it done. Unless T is asking for $35 million and won't budge, or $38 million and won't budge.
And we know that's not true. We know it. He would, he by the way, he might get $35 million if he became a free agent because he's just far and away the best that the Patriots may say, screw it. Or one of these teams may just, and well, that's why you got to tag him on Tuesday when the window rolls around. But that's another topic.
And again, to be clear, because we've talked about this a few times lately, it wouldn't be the intent of tag and we're going to play you on the tag. The intent would be tag and we're going to get an extension done, or we're going to have to trade you if we can't get an extension done. But Joe's been very clear about what they're looking for, what he's looking for from this team this offseason. And with no excuses, I think that it's pretty much get it done. There's maybe a few trades that exist with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson that are in the fantasy realm land that would be fine, that are so far into Madden that you can't really consider them to be realistic, that involve like trading T for an ascending wide receiver on a rookie contract who could be a clear wide receiver, or trading Trey for a top tier pass rusher, because there could be a lot of top tier pass rushers available. And we'll get into that conversation probably more this week. If those are the moves, like there are some acceptable edge cases there, but they're so outlandish that like it's kind of silly. So given their financial status going into this offseason, I think very simply the way they can show Joe Burrow that they're taking this seriously with him and they're trying to win with him at quarterback, given what they have there as that asset, it does just start with getting those deals done. And then it's getting the rest of the offseason right. It's not missing out on certain players because you've lowballed them and pissed them off so much that they don't want to negotiate with you anymore. It's getting the right players in the building, even if it's not playing at the top of the market. You mentioned Milton Williams earlier, James. There's some reservations I have even there. And I really like Milton Williams. I think that'd be a good signing. But like there's reservations I have about the top of this free agent market, which is generally rough this year. And so
no doubt
it's going to be more about the sum of the parts than the individual players when we get to unrestricted free agency and the external guys. But there's no excuses this offseason. If these things don't get done, it's not because they couldn't, it's because they chose not to. And unless they really nail it in terms of the alternative, there's going to be very little grace for this front office.
Yeah, it's they know these guys. They know what they can be. I'll throw one T trade out there. If they traded T for DK Metcalf, would that be better? He wants to get paid too. That wouldn't be better. That would not be better. And Joe wouldn't like that more. And so there you go. There's one. If they signed Devontae Adams, who's 33, would you prefer that? Like, it sounds good, but it's messing with the flow. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And what does make sense, especially in this free agent market, to your point, is paying what you know, and then adding the role players necessary that might play big roles, but adding those guys from the big fish, big splash part of it. There's a reason these teams are salivating at T. Higgins and would love, if Trey was on the free agent market, of course they would love to pay him. Yeah, he's not. He's under contract. Jamar would get $50 million per year if he was an unrestricted free agent. Unrestricted, he would get a ton. He would get crazy money. He would. And that's what's interesting about it is it's like, all right, well, 2 of these 3 guys are under contract. They want to be here. T wants to be here. Switch his agent to be here. Get it done. And that's where Joe's at. And so not only is Joe watching and the entire fan base watching, but Joe said something on Pardon My Take that was interesting when he talked about the restructures and what it could mean and what it does mean. And it's pay cut, salary bonus up front, convert money, push money back, and then convert it later to create all these things that he's talking about. And at the end, he's like, they're like, well, which one would you take? And he said, we'll see. I don't think Joe Burrow in 2025 is going to take a pay cut. But if you do the right things, show him that you're all in on winning. Are we sure in 2030 he's going to be like, man, I need to get every dime out of the Bengals? Like, if he's fully confident that you're all in on winning, all in on spending, all in on Lombardis, you can build up the word that I love to use, equity, with your star quarterback, where he trusts you to field a winner, to pay your guys and your top guys. And he'll be like, you know what? He'll do the Brady. Where it's like, I'll take a little less. And that little less might mean a pay raise from what he's making now in 2030, but could be significantly less on the quarterback market. And that's what I think is interesting here is you've got to play. It's not just the short game, it's the long game. And if you mess it up short term, it can really mess things up long term. No one's going to blame you if you pay these guys and it doesn't work. If you add in free agency and you pay T, Jamar, and Trey, Joe's not going to be like, man, you guys are idiots because you did that if it doesn't work and they don't win. They'll win a Super Bowl or they don't make the playoffs again and it goes haywire for whatever reason. No one's going to blame the front office. The narrative will shift. It really will, including Joe. It puts pressure on Joe to deliver and pressure on these players to deliver and pressure on Zach Taylor to deliver. And that's where you should be at. If you're a front office, if you're ownership, your goal should be to field the best team possible. They would say that is their goal. Okay. It's really hard to do that if you let Trey be disgruntled or T leave in free agency or insert whatever scenario where Jamar isn't practicing for all of camp. Like, those things just can't happen this year. Get it done with all 3.
It leads into the last topic we were going to cover, which we'll kind of speed run here and we'll revisit. Can't have these things lingering. And Tom Cole asked in our mailbag last week about when some of these moves should happen. Mm-hmm. And I went back and looked, James, and the Bengals do not make moves in February. Their transaction log for the last like 10 years in February is very thin and certainly does not feature significant deals. Almost all of the extensions they've gotten done are like right before free agency. Sometimes in the tampering window, sometimes just before that legal negotiation window. Do you have the feel, and we can summarize this and talk about it more another day, that anything is going to change with that this year? Do you think that in the remaining 11 days, 12 days of February, depending on when people are listening to this, that this is a year that'll be different?
I hope so, because from a T standpoint, T is the one I would get done before any of them. He's the one that's under the biggest clock.
Which
I'd
is
want to get
tough
all of them done.
also because the agent there and T are probably incentivized to drag that out a little bit too. But if you're the Bengals, you're incentivized to go the other way.
For sure. And that's why he would be tagged the moment 401 Tuesday. I would tag him. I would. Hey, T, we're keeping you here and we want to keep you here long term. We're doing this to tell the rest of the league that we're not even shopping you and you certainly aren't making free agency. We want to pay you right now. Like that. I would be so intentional about my messaging. And this goes into the communication. It's like, all right, let's get this done now. 4/100. Does that not work? What are you at? You're at 4 for 125. How about 4 for 112? Let's split the difference and get this done. All right. Like and by the way, I think 4 for 112 would be mighty, mighty tempting for T. Higgins. So that would be the one. I don't think they'll be in a rush necessarily to get Jamar done because not that they shouldn't, but I don't think that really impacts their free agent plans. It won't, regardless of the when. And it will lower his cap hit this year. Trey is interesting. I'm sure Trey wants it done sooner. Mm-hmm. In Trey's timeline. So in my timeline would probably be T, Trey, and then Jamar, as weird as that sounds, because priority-wise, Jamar is obviously the best of the group. But the other two guys, I think, are on kind of tighter timelines.
And then Gesicki's price tag probably goes up if he hits free agency. I know he's not part of the group. I know his deal will be much smaller than those three, but his price tag probably goes up if he hits free agency. Most likely.
I'm not as optimistic about him. I'm just not.
That's reasonable. I don't think that there's reason to necessarily be the way they've treated the tight end position, despite what Joe has said there, despite what Gesicki's teammates have said. I think that is reasonable, but I don't know that I would expect anything in February besides maybe a franchise tag, right? Like we'll maybe hear some things at the combine. We might hear some news, but I wouldn't necessarily expect any official transactions from the Bengals.
Get T done before the combine.
And get them all done before the OTA start later this year. Like, let's not have contract disputes hanging over practices when players are getting back together preparing for 2025. That is, I think, the fundamental goal for especially for Jamar. These other ones obviously have to be done well before then, given free agency for T and what Trey Hendrickson has asked for. But we'll have more time to get into those topics, into some of the alternatives to Trey, some of the trade ideas out there that many people have expressed, and the combine coming up quickly as well. We'll continue to have you covered here on Locked On Bengals as the NFL calendar rolls on. And until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.
Straight cash, homie.